name it. I don't care who it is. If they have authority, that authority has been given to them by God, and it was given for the purpose of them serving. We've really messed that one up pretty good, haven't we? But you see, wicked man doesn't think in those terms. Wicked man sees authority as an opportunity for advantage. You see, God designed leadership and authority for service. He designed leadership and authority for service. Now, we're going to get back to the issue of husbands. But before we do that, I want us to nail down this concept in our minds as believers. That leadership and authority are always for service. There aren't any exceptions. People, I would even go as far as to say, even when you get into the Godhead, God still uses his authority for service. It's an amazing thought, isn't it? But we're going to see how that plays out here in a moment. And remember this. If we think of authority as power to be served, how are we thinking? We're thinking like pagans, not like Christians. We're thinking like the world thinks, not like Christians. Not like Christ wants us to think and desires for us to think in these matters. Now, this isn't on your outline, but just to give you something kind of visually to help you understand this, generally this is the way we think. Our thinking is ruler equals being served. The ruler says, you serve me. I'm the ruler. I'm the one with the power. Serve me. We think of power in terms of others serve me. If I have power, you serve. People, do you want to see how far out that plays? Look at the pagan gods. What's the idea there? The gods must be served. Across the board. Go anywhere you want. It doesn't matter what pagan god you pick. They must be served. They have power. You serve them. Now we're going to see here in a moment that along with that understanding of us serving the gods comes the understanding that the gods somehow need serving. They're deficient. Now, for some reason, paganism doesn't ever quite make that connection. But they are then worshiping a God that has needs. And that's dangerous. So you see, when we think of service, when we think of rulers, when we think of power, we think of us serving the ruler because he has the power. And then it makes everyone else as the peons, and he's the king. Now, let's look at the Christian concept of rulership. In the Christian concept, the ruler serves the others. Imagine what would happen if our world could understand that concept. Imagine how radically everything would change. If the ruler really saw that they were put in that place to serve all the others. You know, our founding fathers in America understood that principle. The one thing they didn't account for was sinful man. I think most of those men had good hearts and had a desire to really see this implemented. But what they didn't account for was sinful beings being the ones in that level of rulership. And how absolute rulership corrupts absolutely. But you see, in the biblical principle, the ruler serves the others. And power is always there for provision. We have power so that we can provide. Now think of this in terms of God. He's all-powerful. What does he do? provides all things. Power, provision. Now let's, for just a moment, for the sake so that you'll feel like we are getting a sermon somewhat on husbands, take that down for just a moment to the husband level. When the husband has authority, when there is some power there, what's his purpose? Provide, serve. You see how that radically changes everything? It's not an issue of you serve me when you're the husband. It's I'm the husband. I've been given authority. I've been given power. Therefore, I'm to serve. I'm to use that power to provide. That's my calling. Now, I guess one of the things that stirred me to thinking about this principle, and I shared this with Randy the other day over at the shop. Like I said at the beginning, there's been 2 or 3 things that have kind of hit me this week that have kept shifting me back to us getting a proper understanding of biblical authority. Was a church sign that I saw the other day. Some of y'all have probably seen it. I'm not going to mention the exact church. But the sign said this: Jesus would rather die than live without you in heaven. Now maybe on first thought you say, well, you know, he does want us there with him. But the principle that is being portrayed is that of a God who is needy. A God that cannot be satisfied unless we are there. A God who is almost wringing his hands in desperation that something might happen to thwart that. Is that your impression of God? Can I say this morning, that is not a biblical impression of God. I hope that those who put up that sign did it with well-meaning intentions and just didn't really think through it too well. I'm hoping that could be said of a lot of church signs we see. Just didn't think through it too well. But what bothers me is I see to a large extent Christianity in America falling to this idea of a needy God. A God who has great needs. To the extent that, by the way, I've started my blog up again, and this week sometime I hope to write my next blog, and the title of my next blog is going to be The Sin of Desiring Desperate Deities. Do you worship a desperate deity this morning? A deity that is needy instead of a deity that provides all things. A deity who has all, who is in need of nothing, but blesses those by giving of himself. There's a grave difference there. There's a huge difference in how our conception of God. Is he there wringing his hands in desperate need, or is he there with all power and all things, giving and blessing so that people can enjoy him? There is a big difference there. But remember that our sinful hearts innately believe that authority and power are about being served. It's because of sin that we think that way. Originally, it was not so. I believe there's no doubt in my mind that originally Adam and Eve clearly understood this principle. And as we get back to biblical truth, we then begin to understand this principle as well. As I said a few moments ago, it begins with the pagan view of gods and who they are.